Revealed, the sinister secrets of a cursed research submarine they desperately want to hide. The air hung thick with tension in Harrow's Point, a quaint coastal town steeped in whispers and shivers. Rachel stared at the headlines blaring from her phone, her heart pounding. Cursed submarine. Truth or folklore? Was this the key to uncovering the secrets that had drawn her husband into the dark depths of the ocean before he vanished without a trace? As she stood in her worn-out living room, the walls felt as if they were closing in, stretching and pulling at her sanity. In the dim light of the early afternoon, the wind howled outside, striking the aged clapboard siding like ghostly hands trying to break in. Every shadow seemed alive, dancing on the edges of her vision. Late autumn leaves twirled around her feet, as if teasing her, beckoning her to follow. The town's picturesque facade, the rocky shores and cozy, sun-bleached houses, masked a sinister undercurrent that Rachel could no longer ignore. Every night, the unsettling echoes of crashing waves blended with sinister whispers that hunted her in her dreams. She walked her children to school. She could feel it, the gaze of the townsfolk fixed upon her, eyes filled with pity and something else, something more jagged and dark. Is it true? Someone had murmured behind her, their words twisting like razor blades in the breeze. She tried to shake it off, to keep things normal for her kids, but lately, the routine felt mutilated, distorted with fear. When dusk settled in, the peace of the day gave way to swirling shadows. An unsettling crash rattled through the deserted streets one chilly night. Rachel held her breath, straining her ears against the silence. Was that just the wind or something worse? As she peered through the frosted glass of her front door, the world turned monstrous, every tree a looming figure against the moonlight. The paranoia coiled around her heart, slithering into every aspect of her existence. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. When old rumors resurfaced about the submarine project, claiming that it was cursed, Rachel felt a chill deep in her bones. She followed the leads to the town library, the musty air heavy with secrets. As she rifled through records, the librarian, with knowing eyes, kept glancing her way, but whenever Rachel approached, she retreated like a phantom into the stacks. What did she know? Glimpses of her loved ones, her children, wide-eyed and innocent, flashed through her mind, reminding her of the stakes. It was when the photographs began arriving, crisp and cold, chronicling her life from the shadows, that the line between paranoia and reality started to blur. In one photo, she stood sipping coffee, blissfully unaware of the figure watching her from across the street. Rachel shuddered, locking her doors night after night, frantically making sure every window was secure. The fear building inside her morphed her surroundings into a nightmare. She felt the suffocating grip of isolation closing in. Her once comforting home transformed into a prison, with her closest friends seeming distant and evasive. Trust twisted into suspicion. Each whisper in the dark grew louder, drowning her in despair. What if they were all part of it? Every face she once knew turned into a mask of betrayal. Standing on the brink of a revelation, a figure loomed outside her door, silhouetted by the dim porch light. Rachel's heart sputtered, her breath quickening, as she gripped the cold handle of her kitchen knife. The truth lay within reach, but what cost would it exact? Would she uncover the terrifying depths of the conspiracy, or become yet another casualty of the town's haunting legacy? As the shadow drew closer, Rachel's pulse thumped in her ears. This was just the beginning. The door creaked open on its own, a slow and foreboding motion that sent ice through Rachel's veins. She stood frozen, knife in hand, too scared to breathe. The night outside dripped into her house, carrying the chill that wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. "Hello?" Her voice trembled. No response came, just the steady rasp of the wind and the distant crash of waves on the rocky shore. Rachel took a step back, her instincts screaming. She felt the shadows pressing closer, folding around her like a shroud. Her grip tightened on the knife, heart pounding like a bass drum in her ears. "What do you want?" She called out again, her voice barely a whisper. Each syllable felt heavier, laden with the weight of her fear. The silhouette moved, shifting just beyond the threshold. She could barely make out the features: lank hair, a familiar build. Her heart raced as she strained to see better. Was it him? Could it be her husband? "Please, come in," she urged, desperate to find out. Without waiting for an answer, she instinctively stepped back, warily inviting him in. But as the light flickered from inside, the figure melted into nothingness. The moment shattered like glass. Frustration overwhelmed her. She stepped outside into the cold embrace of night. "Michael, is that you?" The darkness answered only with an eerie silence, broken intermittently by the distant cries of seabirds. Just then, a sharp snap echoed from behind her. Rachel spun around, heart in her throat. A chill ran down her spine as she spotted a shadow flitting behind a nearby tree. Adrenaline kicked in, and she turned to run, pounding back toward her house. Each beat of her heart seemed to sync with the soft thud of footsteps behind her. She could feel them. Someone was losing ground, closing in. Panic surged, pushing her faster. She burst through the door and slammed it shut, securing the lock with shaky hands. She pressed her back against the door, gasping for breath, eyes darting to the windows. Then, her phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a new message. Visibly shaking, she checked it. "Stop digging, Rachel. You're in over your head." A chill enveloped her. "No. Who are you?" She shouted at the empty air, the echo of her voice frightening her with its intensity. The phone vibrated again. Another message, this time a picture. She clicked it open, and her blood ran cold. It was a photograph of her in the library, caught mid-laugh, completely unaware. And in the corner, barely visible, was the blurred figure of the librarian. The truth bubbled just beneath her skin, igniting layers of horror that spread through her body. The librarian, the townsfolk, the photographs, it all intertwined, a web tightening around her. With trembling hands, Rachel scrolled through her phone, searching for clues, for anything that could explain this nightmare. As the screen flickered and life buzzed back to normal, the familiar faces, the trusted friends, trained smiles turned sinister in her mind. Just then, 3 loud knocks reverberated through the front door, slicing the air. "Rachel, open up," a familiar voice begged. It was Sam, her closest friend. But in this moment, trust felt like poison. "What do you want?" she yelled, panic rising. "Let me in. I know more than I'm telling you." The urgency in his tone was real, but her instincts screamed danger. With nightfall, encroaching darkness billowing ever closer, Rachel was faced with a choice. Open the door and risk everything, or keep it shut and abide by the ever-growing shadows that clawed at her sanity. One question echoed in her mind as she weighed the terrifying options. Could her next step lead her closer to the truth, or deeper into the curse that smothered her town? Rachel's pulse thundered in her ears as she hesitated, caught in a standoff between her instincts and the repercussions of fear. The knocks came again, insistent. Sam's voice, once comforting, now sounded like the slicing of ice. "Rachel, I'm in trouble too. Please, you have to trust me." Trust. The word clung like vapors of poison in the air around her. Memories flickered through her mind: the time Sam had betrayed her in junior high over a boy, the uneasy laughter and veiled glances in the library. Could he be one of them? "Open the door," he shouted again, desperation lacing each syllable. She moved closer to the door, the knife trembling in her hands. Could she afford to reveal herself, to let anyone in, especially now? The warmth of a light flickered over her shoulder, emanating from the living room. It pulsed ominously, syncing with her heightened anxiety. Rachel turned to peer into the glow, the shadows cast by the flickering bulb dancing along the walls like mocking shadows. "Let me in, we don't have time." Sam's voice broke through the haze. It clawed at her resolve. She stepped away from the door, retreating into the embrace of the familiar chaos in her home: photos, bookshelves, and the remnants of a life once filled with laughter. She glanced at her phone. No new messages. No sign of the unseen terror that lurked outside. "Rachel." A gust of wind rattled the windows, and the light flickered once more. A sharp pang of intuition warned her. She retreated deeper into the gloom. The shadows were more than mere darkness. They seemed to breathe and twist with a will of their own. What if she didn't open the door? What if she stayed behind the protection of the lock, isolated but safe? The thought nearly comforted her until she stared into the living room mirror. Behind her, in the reflection, stood a figure, a ghostly silhouette, blurred and hollow, mere inches away. Rachel's breath hitched, her heart pounding against her ribcage as she turned quickly, but the space behind her was empty. Just the clattering of her own panicked thoughts echoed off the walls. The phone buzzed again, sending her heart into a frenzy. "Open the door," Sam yelled again, voice shaking now with anger and fear. Scrambling, she stepped to the window, peeking through the curtains. The darkness yawned open, swallowing the distant outlines of trees and houses. No sign of movement, just the howling wind and crashing waves that reverberated through the thick air like a final warning. Then, a flicker of motion caught her eye, a shadow phasing in and out of sight, gliding between the trees in her front yard. Through the veil of darkness, she could barely make out the librarian's iconic figure, unmistakable and gnawing at her sanity. "Rachel, please." The pleading in Sam's voice cut through her daze. She took a deep breath and grasped the doorknob. It felt cold, lifeless, and devoid of the warmth of friendship. "I'm here for you." His voice strained, the honor of their friendship hanging on a precipice. Yet the image of the librarian, the threat she represented, rammed into her thoughts like a runaway freight train. Would opening that door invite a danger she couldn't escape from? What if he was in league with them? Her hand hovered, trembling, as she hesitated between the safety of her locked door and the bonds of a friendship, one that might be all she had left. But the shadows began to converge. The walls closed in, and a sudden realization gripped her. If she did not act soon, they would not wait. The darkness was stacking the odds against her, summoning every ounce of courage. Rachel whispered, "What is happening?" Then, a third knock, harder and more violent than before. A rattle reverberated through the door. "Rachel, this isn't me. You can't let him win." What did he mean? Who was winning? Clarity slipped away as panic raced through her. She had to choose. The door, the key to either safety or doom, awaited her decision. With uncertainty thickening her breath, she made a move, one that could shatter the fragile reality surrounding her. Whatever awaited her on the other side of that door, one question consumed her thoughts. Was there any escape left to find? And in that moment, one final image flickered through, an old, peeling newspaper article that she had found tucked away in the library, covered in dust. "Cursed Souls of Basswood Bay." With dread weaving its icy tendrils deeper, Rachel realized something. She had yet to uncover the darkest threads of this tapestry. What truths lurked beneath the surface, waiting to rise? Rachel's heart raced as she stood there, her breath caught in her throat. The knife in her hand felt heavy, cold against her clammy skin. As the shadows loomed closer, they seemed to breathe with a life of their own, as if they were sentient beings, waiting for her to make a mistake. "Rachel, please." Sam's voice trembled. She could hear the fear, the desperation carving craters into his words. Memories of laughter and shared secrets lingered just outside her periphery, pulling at her, trying to reel her back to safety. But safety felt like a mirage now, flickering on the horizon, just out of reach. "Why should I trust you?" she whispered into the stillness. Her voice was thin, barely able to cut through the oppressive silence that surrounded her. "Because they're coming for us, for both of us," Sam shouted, pounding his fists against the door. "You don't have a clue what they want." Another rattle shook the wooden frame, but this time, the force ran deeper, an echo of something sinister lurking just beyond. Rachel's mind raced. Images of the librarian surfaced again, slinking around the edges of her being like an unwanted ghost. She remembered the haunting whispers, the shivers that ran down her spine as she read the old, yellowed pages of the cursed accounts. "You have to show me you're not one of them first," she cried, eyes darting toward the window again. The wind had picked up, moaning like a banshee, harmonizing with her growing dread. Out in the darkness, the librarian adjusted her glasses, her face shadowed but painfully familiar. She hovered just out of sight, but remained where Rachel could feel her presence, a palpable weight in the air. "Sam," Rachel shouted, turning back to the door. "What do you know about her? What do they want from you?" Silence. Just her own breathing filled the space, thick with tension. Rachel, it's not about her. It's bigger than that. You have to let me in, please. There's no time. His voice cracked. The doorknob felt slick with her sweat as she tightened her grip, reevaluating her choices. The librarian's ghost-like presence felt so wrong, and yet strangely anchored in reality. What if Sam was lying? What if the darkness outside was somehow a reflection of him? Just then, the lights flickered one last time before plunging her into total darkness. Her breath caught, the air thin as she fought to dispel the encroaching panic. Rachel, the lights are going out. They'll come for you first if you don't stop. Rachel cut him off, heart pounding. The shadows seemed to respond, dark tendrils reaching out toward her, whispering her name in a sinister chorus. Suddenly, a knock sounded, not from the door, but from behind her, low and unsettling. The sound crawled across her skin like icy fingers. She dared to turn around, gripping the knife tighter. Her heart raced as the contours of the living room twisted in her mind. So many shadows, so many eyes. Something lurked just behind the veil of darkness, waiting to swallow her whole. Rachel, a voice whispered, soft and eerie, slithering around her like a net. It was a soothing tone, yet deeply unsettling. We're here. Rachel's instincts blared like alarm bells. This voice was not Sam. It was different, darker, filled with intentions unmasked. She spun back to the door, her throat dry as dust, the looming decision closing in around her. The librarian, what did she want? Sam, what was he hiding? As Rachel took a step back, her fingers slipped from the knob. She couldn't do it. She couldn't risk it all. Then, a scream from outside echoed through the night. A voice she recognized as her mother's. The world tilted beneath her, spinning out of control. In that striking moment, one thought thundered in her mind. What if she was already too late? With a heart laden with horror, Rachel understood drive wasn't safety. In that instant, a monstrous shadow appeared in the corner of her vision, more than just the librarian, more than just her fear, and a chilling question reverberated through her mind. What if the real monsters were already inside? Rachel's breath quickened as she tried to process the scream. It lingered, echoing through the thick evening air like a distant siren. Her heart pounded furiously, drowning out any logical thought. Would she bring her mother into this? Or was she stepping into a trap, the shadows pressed against her, a living entity eager to close in? She felt the frigid tendrils snake around her ankles, their touch sending her into a primal state of fear. What do you want from us? She yelled, voice trembling as she strained to focus. Rachel, the whisper coiled tighter, oozing with anticipation. You already know. She clutched the knife, its grip familiar but also foreign in her increasingly shaking hands. If she could only hold on to it a little tighter, everything would settle. But the knife felt like a heavy reminder of her choices, her impending doom. Sam's calls were muffled by overwhelming dread. Was the darkness simply a reflection of what lurked in her mind, or was there truly something waiting for her? Rachel, don't listen to them. Sam's voice broke through her haze, cracking like dried leaves beneath heavy boots. Her eyes darted around to the corners of the room, the shadows merging, breathing in sync. Something gleamed in the dimness, just out of her line of sight. A smudge of movement, a reflection, perhaps. Whatever it was, it consumed her focus, drawing her in. Rachel. The desperation in Sam's voice was palpable. You need to trust me. Please. They want your fear. Don't give it to them. There was a rustling noise, a scrape that sounded like nails on wood, and it came from behind her again. She flinched, but couldn't turn away from the twisting figure that had emerged in her periphery, the librarian. With her glasses shimmering ominously, she took a step closer, eyes glimmering like distant stars, devoid of warmth. Rachel, the librarian's voice dripped with malice, a sweet lullaby tainted by an unseen horror. You have so much potential, we can show you the truth. There's a power inside you that you don't even know about. In that moment, Rachel could feel the shadows wrapping around her mind, tugging at her sanity. They weren't just shadows. They were memories, anxieties made flesh, surging forth to uncover every sleepless night she'd fought through. No, she screamed, forcing herself to resist, to push the oppressive weight crashing down on her thoughts away. You're lying. None of this is real. With one swift motion, she turned, lunging towards the door, desperate for freedom. Her heart raced, pounding against the confines of her chest. Every instinct yelled for her to escape, to not look back. But Sam's voice grounded her. Rachel, wait. His words flowed thick with urgency. If you leave, you may not come back. We're both trapped here. Please trust me. Tension teetered in the air like a suspended breath. She stood frozen, warring instincts battling within her. The librarian glided in closer, her spectral form swirling with the shadows. You see? He asked, just as afraid. You have only one choice to make. Unravel the screams or submit to your fate. Rachel felt tears slipping down her cheeks, crashing silently onto the floor, sizzling against the cold surface. Which fate awaited her? Would she choose the unknown or leap into the arms of familiar darkness? The shadows quivered, twisting shapes beckoning her to surrender. The scream from outside pierced the veil once more, her mother's voice filled with terror. That one plea sent a bitter chill down Rachel's spine, paralyzing her will. That couldn't be her fate. Sam was right. She'd have to break free. But how? Just as she made her decision, a figure darted from the depths of the shadows, lunging at her with outstretched arms. Rachel! It screeched in a voice that wasn't quite human. She recoiled, stepping back, feeling the knife slip from her fingers, clattering to the floor. Time within the room warped, stretching and twisting. The ground beneath her feet felt less solid with every heartbeat, and as she faced the horror in front of her, a new, gut-wrenching question clawed its way to the surface. What was coming for her now? Would it be her mother who had come to save her, or something far worse? Rachel barely registered the shattering sound of the knife hitting the floor before the figure lunged. It seemed to hang in the air, the flickering light casting grotesque shadows that warped its form. A gnarled face twisted into a mocking grin, dripping with nightmarish anticipation. Eyes devoid of life stared back at her, dark pits that swallowed any remaining light. She stumbled back, trying to get as far away from the creature as possible, her heart hammering in her chest. The librarian's insistence still danced on the edge of her consciousness like a dull ache. Unravel the screams, run, Sam shouted, snapping Rachel back to the present. The urgency in his voice flooded her with adrenaline. Her instincts kicked in. She darted to the side, toward the heavy oak door that stood like a sentry to her escape, but the shadows writhed, rising to block her path. They thickened, swirling in grotesque formations, whispering incoherently. Rachel, you cannot escape, only acceptance can set you free. They hissed in a cacophony of sinister tones that in a split second, she felt a tug at her consciousness. Images flooding her mind, memories distorted, leveraged by fear. The faces of loved ones, twisted in torment, loomed over her, forcing her to confront every regret, every fleeting moment of shame. No, she gasped, shaking her head violently as if she could dislodge the weight of those memories. But they clung to her like a venomous fog. The librarian's figure shimmered closer. Don't you want to be powerful, Rachel? Join us. Join the shadows. Her voice oozed with malice, intoxicating yet suffocating. Rachel, focus. Sam's voice jolted her again, nudging at her resolve. She couldn't give in. If she did, they would take everything: her mom, Sam, her very soul. With panic clawing at her throat, Rachel steeled herself. Driven by the primal urge to survive, she reached for the door handle. It felt cold and unyielding beneath her fingers, as if it meant to resist her. She twisted and pulled with all her might, a desperate plea echoing in her heart. The door barely budged, an unseen force pushing back against her efforts. The librarian laughed, a sound that turned cold in the air. You think you can run? This place is a labyrinth of your fears where every escape is but a door to another nightmare. Before she could respond, a screech erupted from the shadows behind her, a haunting, soul-draining sound that reminded Rachel of sea sirens beckoning their prey. She turned, catching a glimpse of the creature no longer cloaked in mystery, but a horrifying figure with elongated limbs and twisted features that melted her strength with despair. Rachel! Sam shouted again, the sound filled with agony and disbelief. He lunged forward, attempting to pull Rachel back to him, but the turbulent shadows pulled them apart like a riptide tearing through flesh. An overwhelming feeling of isolation wrapped around Rachel, stifling her cries as the air grew thick and clammy with dread. This was not just a trial. It was a reckoning. Then, Just as she felt herself slipping into hopelessness, a flicker of determination ignited. She locked eyes with the lurking horror, a battle cry raging within her. She had power. Her resistance gave her strength. With a guttural scream that shattered the height of her fear, Rachel slammed her weight against the door, willing it to give way. As the door creaked open, a raw energy surged around her, lifting the veil of darkness momentarily. Light poured in a blinding contrast to the shadows, dispersing the lurking horrors into shrill whispers that receded. It was not an escape, but a reprieve. Yet just outside that doorway, a new sound emerged, a voice she had not expected. "Rachel, it's time to come home." It was her mother's voice, sweet yet laced with an undertone she couldn't place. Was it salvation or entrapment? With her heart racing wildly in her chest, Rachel found herself at a crossroads once again. The shadows throbbed with uncertainty behind her. Was this offer a lifeline, or another chain binding her to darkness? Was there a choice left to make? Rachel stepped toward the path, curious and terrified all at once, the lingering promise of truth beckoning her closer as the door swung wider. Rachel hesitated, her pulse hammering against her ribcage. The sweet, musical tone of her mother's voice floated in the air like an ancient curse. She had missed that voice, longed for it during the sleepless nights, but now it felt like a snare tightening around her heart. "Rachel, darling, come home," the voice coaxed again, carrying an almost hypnotic quality that sent shivers down her spine. The shadows swirled behind her, growling low like wild animals waiting for the right moment to pounce. In that moment, they played at the edges of her sanity, urging her to succumb, to surrender. "Don't listen," Sam's voice chimed in, desperation lacing his tone. He reached forward, stretching his hand toward her through the growing darkness. "It's a trick. Stay with me." Rachel's breath quickened. Home. Was it the safety she once knew, or a promised end? She was torn, caught between instinctively moving toward the voice and her grounding bond with Sam. Rachel, the voice dripped with sickly sweet memories. "It's so lonely out here. You've suffered long enough." "I'm waiting." Each word felt like a spider crawling up her spine. She could almost feel her mother's arms wrapping tightly around her, fingers warm and reassuring. Yet that memory faded into something grotesque. The shadows flickered, revealing the true face of the nightmare before her, a creature that once was her mother, twisted now into something malevolent and beautiful, an alluring horror designed to draw her in. "Rachel, focus!" Sam shouted again, his eyes wide with panic. The air grew heavy, filled with a sharp stench of decay, as if the breath of ancient spirits hovered just beyond the door. The shadows thrashed, rising and falling like ocean waves, crashing against Rachel's will. They clawed at her thoughts, taunting her with promises of peace and faded recollections of the past. "Just turn around," they taunted. "You know she wants you. Home is a place of comfort." "No, they're lying." Sam's voice cut through the chaos, slicing the web of temptation apart. "We can fight this. You're not alone." Rachel felt his presence like a shield against the overwhelming tide of fear. Heart pounding in rhythm with her mother's beckoning call, she forced herself to think. What were they aiming for? Acceptance or destruction? The decision spilled forth from her throat, a whisper that grew more substantial. "I don't want to go back." The shadows lunged at her, words falling away like rotting foliage, their haunting whispers replaced by a deafening silence, which suddenly grew oppressive. "Then be our sacrifice." The librarian's ghostly figure materialized from thin air, looming near the door, impossibly close. "You'll join the shadows, make peace with your fears." "No." The scream ripped from Rachel's lips, fiercer than before. She spun around and ran back toward Sam, the warm flicker of hope igniting her defiance. "Sam, we need to get out." Together, they pushed against the tide of shadows, fingers gripping tight to each other's wrists. The door trembled but held, the power of their unity shining a blinding light. But behind them, the librarian was relentless, shadowy arms reaching out to drag Rachel back toward the darkness. "You cannot outrun fate. It will consume you both." The door creaked as it began to close, a final promise of escape just out of reach. "Rachel, move," Sam bellowed, reinforcing her resolve. With one last burst of strength, fueled by desperation and hope, Rachel pushed against the door, shoving with everything she had left. Just as the shadowy figures collided with them, the door burst open, sending a rush of cold air and light as they tumbled forward into the unknown. But when Rachel looked up, the world beyond was not what she had imagined. It was a twisted reflection, a nightmarish version of reality suffocated by the same darkness they had just escaped. The walls were alive, pulsating like a heartbeat, and looming tall was a figure she recognized. Rachel, the figure spoke, voice unmistakable but tainted with malice. You've come home. What was this place? And what awaited her? There, Rachel's heart pounded louder than ever, locked in terror as they stood on the threshold of another nightmare. What horrors loomed just ahead in the dark? Rachel stood frozen, heart racing as the figure stepped forward. Shadows writhed around them, dancing to an electric tune only they could hear. The air crackled with tension, and Rachel felt as though the walls themselves were closing in. She wanted to scream, to run, but her body wouldn't obey. Look at me, the figure commanded, a twisted smile creeping across its face. The familiarity of her mother's shape was shrouded in darkness, creating a grotesque mirror of what should have been warmth and love. You've been searching for me. You missed me so much. Each syllable dripped with venom, wrapping around Rachel like a thick fog. Mom. Rachel's voice was barely above a whisper, fear gripping her throat. Yes, my dear. The figure tilted its head, eyes glowing like embers in a dying fire. I've waited for this moment. You've suffered, but I can make it all go away. Together, we can reclaim what was lost. Sam stood beside her, his grip tightening. Get back. You're not her. His voice released the sharp clarity Rachel desperately needed, cutting through the haze of deceit. The twisted figure turned its attention toward him, and the room felt colder. Ah, the hero. So brave, but so foolish, it purred, caressing the air between them. You can't protect her from the truth. Rachel's instincts screamed to flee, but the tendrils of darkness were thickening around her, ensnaring her legs. She glanced at the walls pulsating under an unseen rhythm, like a monster readying itself to devour them both. What truth? Rachel's voice trembled, rooted in place by the pull of her mother's dark influence. Your father's secret. The very reason you lost us both. The shadows writhed around the figure, revealing images of splintering waves against a rusted submarine. She saw flashes of her father's face twisted in despair, desperate eyes filled with secrets he took to the grave. He sacrificed us, and now it's your turn. Rachel felt as though the earth had been pulled from beneath her. Each revelation was a knife, twisting deeper into her mind. No, you're lying. But doubt lingered, thorns of fear creeping deeper still. I'm trying to save you, the figure pleaded, voice softening momentarily, a glimmer of the real mother trapped beneath the darkness. Come with me, and you'll understand. Rachel, don't. Sam's urgency pulled her back. The light in her mother's eyes flickered like a dying bulb, shadows curling hungrily around her and fixing Rachel in their ghastly gaze. Stay with me, the figure begged, extending its hand. Together, we could have it all back. Remember the laughter, the warmth? It can all be yours again. Rachel's resolve trembled, caught between the ghostly promise of paradise and the reality of what lay before her. Her breath came in panicked bursts. Sam, I feel trapped. No, Sam shouted. You've already escaped. Don't let them drag you in again. We'll find out the truth together. Rachel's heart hammered, caught in a race against time. Just as she began to inch back, an ear-splitting shriek echoed through the room. The figure's face contorted with rage, shadowed tendrils reaching desperately towards her. Foolish girl. You think you can resist? The walls vibrating with anger. Rachel realized they were amplifying the creature's will. Panic surged, buffeting her like a wave. Run, Sam yelled, his strength pulling her away from the abyss. But just as they turned, the darkness surged forward, roaring like thunder, an unholy force clashing against their escape. Without thinking, Rachel tore free from Sam's grip, moving instinctively toward her mother's image. A split-second choice. A glimmer of hope or the yawning maw of despair. No. Sam's voice shattered through her thoughts. Just when she reached out, the walls erupted with a bone-chilling laughter that sent shivers spiraling down her spine. The blinding shadows surged around her, swallowing her entire world in darkness. The last thing she heard was Sam's desperate cry. Then, Silence fell, blanketing her like a tomb. Where am I? Panic surged. Alone, the darkness shifted, swirling with intention. What? Would it show her now? What horror awaited beyond her grasp? And as she stared into the deep void that had swallowed her reality whole, the chilling question echoed in her mind. What was the true secret her father had hid so deeply? And was it worth the price she would have to pay to uncover it? Rachel felt the suffocating silence wrapping around her, a cold shroud pressing against her skin. She trembled, echoing dread clawing at her chest. Where was she? The darkness danced, taking on forms that twisted and writhed beyond the periphery of her vision. It felt alive, breathing, and hungry. Sam! She screamed, but her voice melted into the void. No answer. Fear surged, turning her blood to ice. The last image of his anguished expression burned into her memory, a flicker of light in this encompassing bleakness. She pressed forward, instinctively searching for something tangible in the emptiness. A wall brushed against her fingertips, damp and cold. It vibrated slightly, almost like it was pulsing with a heartbeat. Panic flared again as she recalled the way shadows twisted and clawed at her, the sinister glee in her mother-esque gaze as it threatened to swallow her whole. What do you want? She demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. It echoed as if the darkness itself was listening, shifting and parting like a curtain. Suddenly, images flickered in the inky blackness. Faces she recognized and faces she didn't see. Flashes of ghostly figures circling an old submarine, echoing with the sound of metal grinding against the depths of the sea. Her father's face appeared, soaked in despair, eyes pleading for understanding. Rachel, help us. The whisper felt raw, reverberating through her bones. Help who? She cried out, desperation edging her voice. But the shadows only laughed, a cacophony of hollow sounds swirling in her ears. They were mocking her, feeding on her confusion and dread. Stay strong. Remember why you're here. Her heartbeat quickened as she tried to gather her thoughts. She had come to find the truth, a truth that had haunted her since childhood, one buried beneath layers of secrecy and fear. But as conviction braided itself into her being, shadows slithered closer, crawling on the ground beneath her feet, as if seeking to pull her toward the depths of despair. Then she heard it. A soft rustle, like dry leaves brushing against stone. And then, again footsteps. Were they real? Or another trick of the darkness? Louder now, the footsteps approached. Rachel pressed her back to the cold wall, holding her breath. The darkness thickened, wrapping around her limbs as she peered into the void. A figure emerged, cloaked in shadows, features obscured. They drew closer, and her heart raced faster. Sam? She whispered, hope glimmering like a faint star. No, not Sam. But I know where he is. The voice was low, almost soothing, but the chill in it sent tremors through her body. The shape stepped into a flicker of light, revealing a twisted smile that mirrored her mother's. It's just another piece of the puzzle, Rachel. You've come so far, why not seek the answers here, in the dark? Who are you? She spat, backing away, but the wall gripped her like iron. The past has secrets, Rachel. Secrets you crave, but they come with a price. Rachel pondered, fleeing, but waited, heart pounding like a drum. Hadn't she just come all this way to confront it all? What price? They want you to know what your father did, the figure hissed. To dive deeper, to unearth what lurks beneath the surface. Suddenly, the shadows intensified, swirling around her like a tempest where nightmares thrived. Join us, or perish, the figure drawled, and the laughter of 1,000 anguished voices merged into a singular howl. Rachel's breaths became sharp gasps. She was teetering at the edge of blackness, and she sensed the weight of something malignant in the air. She had to fight back. But then the darkness enveloped her completely, drowning out her thoughts and engulfing her in a maelstrom of terror. Images flooded her mind, the submarine. Memories of joy twisted into something grotesque, the flashes of pain that echoed from the depths, and then, the piercing eyes of her mother. Face the truth. It screamed at Rachel's heart stuttered. The price was more than she could fathom. She had to know, but was she ready for the depths of darkness that awaited? And just as she felt her grip on reality breaking, a sudden flicker ignited in the shadows, a familiar presence. Was it Sam or another trick? The question shimmered dangerously in the air. Was uncovering the truth worth her soul? As the shadows closed in tighter, the choice loomed brighter, a revelation that could break her or rebuild her. What twisted truths would Rachel discover in the face of her family's horrific past? And at what cost? Rachel's breath came in ragged gasps as she faced the grotesque figure of her mother, twisted by darkness, yet still hauntingly familiar. You've always known, Rachel. It's time to unveil the truth, the figure urged, a sickly sweetness threading through her words. Rachel felt anger bubbling within her. The chilling recognition of the horror before her settled deep in her bones. "No, you're not my mother," she shouted, her voice defiant even as the shadows tightened around her. The darkness flared and shrieked, rebelling against her courage. Rachel clung to her memories of warmth, laughter, and love, memories that felt stolen yet within reach. "You must embrace your fear to know your power," the specter taunted, reaching toward her. "Your father hid the deepest of secrets, and now it's your turn." Images exploded in her mind, a montage of anguish and sorrow. The submarine, the whispers of cursed souls, echoes of her parents' betrayal. It all flowed like a rushing river deep inside her, mixing confusion with clarity, urging her to confront the truth she buried so deep. "Your father's sacrifice shackled us both," the figure hissed. "Let me free you." Rachel's heart raced as a sudden clarity arose, sharp and solid. "Free me? Or bind me further?" She shot back, feeling the power of her resolve take root. Remember, she thought fiercely, she was not alone. Sam's voice rang through her mind, "Don't give in. No more lies." She screamed, "I want to stand for this, and I want to become another sacrifice." The shadows quivered, lashing out in fury, their voices a cacophony of despair and rage. "You will be ours, Rachel. You cannot escape your fate." Yet at that moment, a piercing light glimmered through the darkness. It flickered, bright and blinding. "Together, we can fight." The intensity of Sam's presence felt like a lifeline, a tether anchoring her amidst the chaos. With sheer force of will, Rachel pushed against the encroaching darkness. "I choose my path," she declared, every fiber of her being igniting with purpose. The shadows moaned and recoiled as she took a decisive step toward the light. "I will not allow you to play with my fears." The figure of her mother shrieked, twisting in agony, and Rachel felt the shadowy tendrils starting to wither. Each word of defiance unraveled the layer of despair wrapped tightly around her soul. She could feel the strength return, a spark she thought lost. "Come back, Rachel," her mother wailed, desperation vining through her words. "You belong to us." But Rachel shook her head, the memories of her mother's love surfacing like a protective shield. "No, you're not the truth I seek. I want to let you pull me into the void." Every step drew her closer to that flickering light, a beacon fueled by hope and connection. "We're stronger together." Familiar warmth surged through her, igniting every ounce of love she still had in her heart. In a final surge, Rachel lunged forward, smashing through the shadows shrouding her mother's figure. The light enveloped her completely, and with it, she called out, "Sam, we need to break free." In that moment, everything shifted. The dark figures dissolved in a tide of radiant energy that seemed to pulse with newfound strength. The shadows howled a deafening, unified lament before collapsing in upon themselves. A brilliant flash erupted, and Rachel felt a rush of air as she fell into an expansive nothingness, leaving the horrors behind. Then, she landed softly, the familiar scent of salt and sea air filling her lungs. Dazed, she blinked against the sunlight, squinting as the reality of Harrow's Point came into focus. "Rachel," Sam's voice broke through the haze, grounded, filled with relief. He ran toward her, pulling her into a fierce embrace. "I thought I'd lost you." Rachel clung to him, the anchors of reality settling deep within her. "I almost gave in, but you brought me back," she murmured, tears of gratitude spilling down her cheeks. "Together, remember?" Sam smiled gently, brushing away her tears. "You're stronger than they ever wanted you to know." As they stood together on the rocky shore, the waves gently lapping at their feet, Rachel knew they had a long road ahead. The town had its shadows, but she would face them, uncovering truths and binding the wounds left by pain and sacrifice. And for the first time, she felt hope shimmer under the weight of despair, a beacon lighting the way forward. Let us make sure this never happens to anyone else, she whispered, the conviction firm within her heart. With Sam at her side, she was ready for whatever truth awaited. Her story was just beginning. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and support us. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about Rachel's journey. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. They'll thank you later.